Right, so last summer, a big talk around Penn State at media days was what would Drew Allar look like as a starting quarterback. Now he has 13 starts under his belt. You called the first one against West Virginia. What were your observations of his first full season as starter?
Yeah. Well, I think more good than bad, I mean, really not a lot of bad because you can't put it all on him, but in the games they lost to Michigan, Ohio
Mm,
State, just not enough explosive plays offensively. So part of that is the quarterback, part of it's on the wideouts, people getting open. Um, but I thought all in all, he had a really positive year because he did the first thing that a quarterback has to do, and that's take care of the football. He did a great job of that, not throwing it to the wrong team,
mm.
and so he was very efficient in that way. And I think the next step for him and his development is, to make more plays down the field, and having confidence to maybe take some chances and throw the ball down there, even if guys are covered, and trust that your guys can come up with plays.
So I think it's pretty much universally agreed that the next step for him is to play at his best or at least close to his best when the lights are the brightest in
Yeah.
those big games. But that's obviously easier said than done. What are the keys to him being the guy that you saw against West Virginia against Ohio State?
Yeah. Well, I think the key is to treat it the same way. Don't make the game any bigger than it is. I mean, everybody knows those games are marquee games, but as a competitor, and as a quarterback, those are the games you want to be in,
Mm,
and I think that, but still try to treat it the same way. Don't change your preparation. Don't change any of your routines, and then just try to play loose and play confident, and typically in games like that, if you have some good things happen early in the ball game, you kind of feed off of that. And consequently, if you have some rough things happen early in the game, it can kind of snowball in you that way too. So play loose, play confident. Don't treat it any different than any other game, and try to get some good things happening early in the ball game.
So that first game's going to be a pretty tough one on the road against West Virginia. It's their first time there since I want to say the late 80s. You've played in Morgantown, I think, twice. James compared that to a hornet's nest, that atmosphere. What are your memories of playing at WVU, and what were your big takeaways from that environment?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. We played there one year. We played there. It was the very first year they opened the new stadium, I'm
Mm,
pretty sure. And I remember it rained. It was cold rain when we played there, and it was miserable. Um, I remember that. We won the game, but it was just really, really cold and miserable. And uh, so I remember that. I remember some bottles being thrown out of the stadium, and
mm,
Jack Daniels bottles landing on the field behind our bench. Uh, I also remember my roommate was Kurt Warner, who was a native of West Virginia, who did not go to the in-state school, and he was hurt in a game down there. But I remember they had like a number 25 jersey hanging,
mm.
from the rafters in the stadium there. So they weren't too happy about my roommate not going to school there. So yeah, it's a pretty rough place. They love their football. They're passionate. Um, they've got a great rivalry with the University of Pittsburgh. But we also had a really intense rivalry with them as well. And the game will be a night game. No, not a night game, but
Uh,
it'll be pretty lit up there for sure.
Yeah, so Paul Feinbaum said earlier today, I'm not sure if you saw yet, that he feels James Franklin's tenure at Penn State has been good, but he has to do more. It hasn't been good enough. And rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of Penn State fans are probably in the same boat, or even more extreme when it comes to their view of the program, James Franklin, etc. Do you feel that his tenure has been successful enough here?
Well, I think it's been successful. I mean,
Mm,
just the sheer numbers, it's been successful. They've been a consistent winning program. He's done a great job of recruiting and kind of upgrading the talent level at Penn State consistently. So, I think they put a good product on the field. He has been successful, but a lot of times in this business, you're judged by how you play, coach, perform on the biggest stages and in the biggest games. And for whatever reason, they've been close, but they've not been able to figure out a way to beat Ohio State or Michigan on a consistent basis. And so his record against those two teams is kind of the thing that really gets people's attention. His record against everybody else has been outstanding in the league, but those two teams have been tough for him. So, now it's different because there's no East Division, so you're not going to play those two teams. Like this year, they don't even play Michigan, and you don't have to win those games in order to, get back here to Indianapolis to compete for a championship or even make the college football playoff. So, that's good news for Penn State, but there still is the case of whether it's Michigan, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Ole Miss, whoever it is, when you're playing the teams that are equal to you in talent on the field, those are the games you need to win. And that goes for everybody involved at Penn State.
Do you see any parallels to where the program is now compared to where it was going into 1982? Because for a long time, Penn State was always a winning program, but whether it was controversy with the polls, whether it was a slip up in a regular season game, slip up in a bowl game, they just, for whatever reason, it just didn't end in a national title. And there's some similarities, I feel like, with where the program is now. Do you see any parallels there?
Yeah, I think there are parallels in that, they are now I think they're an upper echelon team in college football, perennially going to be a top 10 team, and are going to win, at least 10, maybe 11 games, and that's the expectation. And I think that's what our teams felt like. Back then it was strictly a matter of the polls of who won a national championship. We were the first one to win one at Penn State in '82, but they had undefeated teams before that didn't get the vote, So Penn State probably should have had at least one, if not two, national championships before we actually won one. They played for one in 1979 when they were undefeated and lost to Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, so they came close there. But they were very, very successful, but didn't really have a chance to compete for national championships the way teams do now with the playoff format.
If you had to predict, would you say that they're going to be one of the 12 teams in the playoff?
Well, I don't like predicting.
Right.
I don't like preseason polls. I don't like predicting. I think they've got a chance to make a run at it for sure. But I think there's a lot of teams at this point, as we're getting ready to start here in another 3 or 4 weeks. There's a lot of teams that they're going to feel that way. But just based on what their track record has been, and you look at their record and where they finished, they would have found themselves in a 12-team playoff. So, they kind of have that track record, so you would think they'd have a great shot at it.
If they don't get in, obviously not making it with 12 teams would look worse from the outside than not making it when there's only 4 teams. What do you think that does to the perception of the program if they don't have any crazy injuries or circumstances, but for whatever reason, they just don't make the playoff?
Well, I don't know. I would say in some ways it would maybe feel that was deflating, but until you really see how that plays out and what the reasons would be for that, again, I think if they stay healthy and if they play the kind of ball they're capable of playing, the way their schedule is set up, they should be in the hunt and in the thick of things when it gets to the month of November.
What are your observations of Andy Kotelnicki? And you mentioned Drew throwing the ball downfield more. How do you think that's going to kind of change the game as far as the offense goes?
Yeah, I've never met Andy. I just have kind of watched him from afar. I really was impressed with what he did at Kansas. I thought they were very creative, very innovative. The thing that I'm interested to see and just how he develops the Penn State offense, is building around. I think in some ways Kansas kind of they didn't have the same kind of personnel that some of the teams they were playing, so they used stuff to their advantage to gain an edge. They also had, I think, both quarterbacks I remember seeing play for him were kind of used in option and some dual threat kind of things, and I don't know that that's necessarily Drew's, that's not his strength. So I'm curious to see how Andy will blend, what he's got with Drew Allar, a big-time NFL caliber arm, what he's got with 2 really outstanding running backs. So it'll be fun to watch. I do know that he's got a good track record. He did a great job at Kansas and at Buffalo with Lance Leopold, and so I'm anxious to see what he does with Penn State.
How do you think Bo Pribula, because you mentioned the style of quarterback he had at Kansas, Bo fits that style. How do you think the offense will suit what he's capable of? So,
well, just again, not knowing exactly what Andy's going to do at Penn State, but based on what I remember seeing Kansas look like, my first reaction would have been, well, that on a whole, the offense probably suits Bo a little bit better than Drew. But I mean, Drew, was a winner last year, and he had good numbers, and so he's your guy. But maybe they'll have certain packages for Bo. Certainly if anything ever happened to Drew, I'm sure that he would be able to step in and Andy could maybe do some different things offensively that if he was the guy on a regular basis. So, and I don't know, in today's world of college football, if a lot of quarterbacks, if they're not playing, if they're not the guy, they're looking to transfer. And the fact that Bo didn't do that and he wanted to stay kind of makes me think he's excited about what this offense might mean for him too.
All right. Anything else?
That's it.